No, there is,
Good evening. Today is Monday, June 24th, 2019, and the time is 6:04, and I'll call the regular meeting of the Town of Mead Board of Trustees to order. Please, roll call, please.
Mayor Whitlow.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Teleszewski.
Here.
Trustee Adams.
Here.
Trustee Babcock. Trustee Broadhead.
Here.
Trustee Harris.
Here.
Trustee Hack.
Here. Mayor
Mayor Whitlow, today is Monday, June 24th, 2019, and you do have a quorum.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is our review and approve agenda. Is there a change? Are there any changes to the agenda tonight? If there's none, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda for this evening, June 24th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next is our informational items tonight. The first one is Water 101, presented by Amber Kaufman, District Manager of Little Thompson Water District. Thank you for coming.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Mayor, if I could, before
Yes.
I ever get started, this was in response to our last meeting where actually one of our trustees had asked for some more information on water. So she's our new general manager for Little Thompson Water District. She's been the general manager for what, about a month?
Couple months?
Okay, a couple months. So she graciously offered to come and talk to us just about some of the issues that came up and just to remind us about water. So thanks again, Amber.
Thank you. Just here to talk a little bit about water use, how we all use it, inside, outside, what the development market is doing, and the impacts to development. You probably already know a little bit about us. Little Thompson Water District covers about 300 square miles, formed in 1960. Cross Larimer, Weld, Boulder counties. Also merged with Mead, took over water service to Mead in about 2002. We have about 8,800 customers. A lot of the projected growth, however, is expected to come in the Mead and Firestone area in the south end of our district. Our water all comes from northern through the Colorado Big Thompson project. We do have some other water supplies, but almost all of our water comes from the other side of the mountain, so we all cheer when there's lots of snow up there like now. In water supplies, we require development to bring its own water. And so they have to go buy water shares, water rights, and dedicate them to the district for development. We do take Colorado Big Thompson, we take Handy Ditch Company, and Consolidated Home Supply. The area around Mead is typically served by the Highland Ditch, and we do not take Highland water because it cannot be converted to municipal use by their bylaws. And up there we have just a little table. It's a little hard to read about the current inventory of water rights that we have. We do have some that have not been converted. All of our native waters, the Handy Ditch Company, the Consolidated Home Supply, we do have some Highland came with incorporating Mead into our service area. And the Supply Ditch Company also came with Mead's incorporation into the district. All of those have not been converted to municipal use, which means we can't deliver that water into people's houses. This table kind of just looks at overall water supply and demand. The green line is the historic trend and the projected water consumption for the district. The bottom blue colors are all CBT, Colorado Big Thompson water that comes from the other side of the mountains. The orange color is Windy Gap. It's another type of water only allowed to be owned by municipalities and water districts. And then the purple is some second use attributable to the Windy Gap water. That type of water is fully consumable, which means you could send it down the sewer pipe of a house and out into the treatment plant, dump it into a river, and then downstream pull it back out and treat it again, which sounds kind of weird, but it's river water. And there's just a couple other things in there. Dry Creek that is our reservoir that we keep for drought protection. And so that just shows a little bit of cushion. It looks like a lot of bit of cushion, but it's a little bit of cushion in case of those drought years when we don't get as much water from the Colorado Big Thompson project or the Mead BOT project. Any questions? So when we talk about water use, there's several ways to do that. 3 ways I've decided to look at it today is the water use per area of lot. This chart is a lot of blue dots, but it's the 2018 water use by lot size, and it's water per square foot of lot, per lot size. So as you can tell, the black line is a little, it's a trend line. It shows where most of the data hits. And so you can see at the smaller end lots, those lots use more per square foot of lot. But I also plotted population per lot on that chart because you get more people in smaller lots. So really it's attributable to the population density. The next chart is irrigation. Irrigation use tends to go up the larger the lots. What I did to derive that information is took the total water use for all of those taps that you saw in the last chart for the whole year, and then subtracted 12 times the February use. And February is typically no outside watering, maybe some people watering trees, but typically nothing more. And so usually that's a good gauge of where your indoor use is. So the remaining use is irrigation use. And I only used residential taps for this analysis. So the trend line in red there shows that at about maybe 3/4 acre lot, the water use tends to flatten out, but that first up to maybe an acre, the water use tends to go up by the lot size. People irrigate more lawn is what it comes to. And there's some kind of trends in there. If you kind of look, there's a wider space after that really dense space, and the water use is kind of all over. Then you get another dense space of dots between like the 2-acre size lots and the 2.5 acre lots. Those lots tend to use more water. They're the larger estate lots. They have a lot more landscaping. They tend to keep a lot of green grass all around their houses. Then you get after that 2.5, then those are more horse properties kind of that tend to have unirrigated land, or farm animals and kind of things like that. Water use by lot size. We did an analysis in 2013 to help justify the urban tap, the standard tap and the urban tap. The urban tap was designed for a smaller lot, requires a smaller dedication of water up front, half of the standard tap. And it's based really on that total water use by lot size. So we went and looked at a 0 to 6,000 square foot lot. It's that top left picture with the red line is what we require for dedication for those urban lots. Almost everything is below that line. Then you look at the graph right below it, 6,000 to 10,000 square foot lots. And the green line is the standard lot dedication, the red line is the urban lot. And most of those can stay right around that red line. So we think that that 9,000 to 10,000 square foot lot is probably that borderline of where those lots can fit under the urban tap. It means they can use less water per lot. And then didn't even look at the urban tap for the next 2 charts, but they're the 10,000 square foot to half acre and then the half acre to 2 acre lots. And those are trending up. If you look at the top right one, most of the spots are below that green line. And then the bottom middle chart, those dots are kind of all over the board. Some of them above, most of them below, but there are quite a few that end up way above. So it's kind of why we break the way we do. And then again up on top you can see the average use per size of lot. How we work with developers, we do have development pay its own way. We don't have the ability to approve or deny projects. We don't encourage or discourage development. We're a utility. We provide a service, if you will. We do not have a mill levy or collect property tax, but we do have the ability to if the electorate decided to do that. We'd have to go to an election to do that, but that is not our intent. We work to find ways to work with people to allow development to continue to happen with waterline projects and water rights. We try to work with them. If there's a water right that makes sense that they want to help dedicate to the district that we can use, then we'll look at it and we'll evaluate it for our use and they can dedicate it. We also partner with towns and developers to build projects, water lines, that kind of thing to help serve our existing customers and our proposed customers. In the town of Mead, there's lots of different developments of various sizes. Those yellow dots are kind of representative of the size of project. We also have in there, it's not a Mead development, but it's in the area, is the Barefoot Lakes project, which is in Firestone. But all told, there's maybe 10,000 taps that, like, ultimate long-term could be built out there if everything went ahead. I can't say that everything's gonna move there, right? Some things fall away, some things take 30 years, some things take longer to happen if they ever do. One of the big drivers is the cost of Colorado Big Thompson water. The chart on the top left shows ownership. The green line in ag ownership of those shares, it mainly started out for agriculture. The bottom line kind of trending up is municipal shares. That means the cities and water districts that own the water. You can tell that it's coming, that there's not going to be a lot of ag water left. And that drives up the cost of Colorado Big Thompson water. You can see the trend of that cost. Not just a couple weeks ago, I checked the price and it was $48,000 a share. 3 years ago, it was $28,000. It's crazy, ridiculous expensive, and really hard for developers to make projects work. We try to work with them to do the right thing, to protect our customers, make sure there's drought protection, but still work for the lower yield of water, the urban tap, the 0.35 acre foot. The urban tap versus standard tap. This is just a little chart of total water use. The blue dots are all of our standard taps. They all are scattered like crazy. Some of them are really high use. They're not all easy to categorize. But the orange dots are all the urban taps, and they go up and down below, but primarily stay below our 114,000 gallons a year. They're designed for that 9,000 square foot lot or less. They do have a surcharge. After somebody uses 114,000 gallons, they go into surcharges for the remainder of the calendar year, $8 per thousand. The standard tap doesn't have that. They're designed for larger lots, and they have twice the amount of water, but don't hit surcharges at any point. That's what we've got for you today. We have the plant investment fees, tap fees, installation fee, water dedication. Those are the basic costs for a water tap. Whether it's in a development or outside of a development. The outside of a development, we sometimes get 35-acre tract that needs a tap. Those probably aren't going to be your people that are included in the town limits, but their taps on those kind of lots are $61,000. And it's because of the cost of raw water. That Colorado Big Thompson cost has driven the cost of our taps up tremendously. The inside of developments, they don't see that cost of water because the developers are picking up that cost up front. And so those customers coming in, those builders coming in are paying the $7,450 for the most part because those lots are the smaller lots that can live on an urban tap. If they're the bigger lots, maybe 2 acres or a half acre, even sometimes $11,450 for those taps. That's how it impacts your town. Anybody have questions?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Informative.
Yeah, a lot of data. It's almost overwhelming, and I understand.
I have a quick question, but it's probably the town manager or our attorney. The Metro District, I mean, these water taps, they're bought through Lake Highland. It eventually goes into the Metro District, and the developer eventually pays for the fees of that in their development, correct or not? Isn't it generally passed on or not?
I can answer actually.
Oh,
We have to review Metro District
yeah.
process. Those tap fees are paid by the builder, not the developer. Those are paid by the builder. The water dedication is made by the developer. So there's a slight difference. Sometimes the developer is the builder, but the home builder, when they come in and they have a lot that's sold and and they're gonna build a house for a customer, that property at that time buys that tab.
Okay.
The Metro District typically covers the water line installation and that kind of thing, but not the actual tap purchase.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for educating us more on
Yeah.
water.
You're welcome.
Right, thank you. Right, next is sales tax discussion, and that will be presented, by our town manager.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, you have, over the last 2 months, you've been reviewing first the sales tax, questionnaire that we did, and then ultimately, we reviewed the results 2 meetings ago. What I would like tonight is staff seeking direction. And the reason is, and I can ask our clerk to weigh in on the timetable, but we're basically looking by somewhere in the end of July of asking for a place on the ballot in November, this November. And we have to, I think it's August 26th, but I'll have her address the dates. But the window is getting very tight. So the question that I'm looking to be answered today is, the data from the survey indicated that the appetite was strongest if we were gonna pursue a sales tax, a 1-cent sales tax, it would be for transportation. And there are a lot of things that need to go into that, how the ballot language is written, how specific we want to include, whether or not we want a sunset period. We asked a lot of those questions. The question that I have for you all is, are you interested in pursuing that? Because if you are, it's gonna set in motion over the next 6 weeks to 2 months what we have to do as a town. And my second question is, are you interested in pursuing any sort of agency to assist in the campaign? You can only do that up until either August 26th or September 7th, depending on the date that Mary tells us. But I kind of looking for direction in both of those areas.
So, the Weld County Elections Office hasn't set their dates yet along with their IGAs because there were some changes to the election code that requires them to set up more, voter areas. And so they're still fleshing out those voter areas before they set their timeline. But based on last year's date, the last meeting that we have where you all could set ballot language and do an IGA with the Weld County would be August 26th.
Questions or comments for staff, board? Tim? Are you in favor of what the voters have suggested to do, the, one sales tax on transportation?
Yeah, we need something done with roads.
And did you want to, go forward with the campaign?
Get somebody in the campaign. Do we have any good with an idea of who we're gonna do?
That would be with probably Magellan, right?
Well, actually, there are a few firms, Slate Communications is one of the more common that most municipalities that I know have used. And I can reach out, but again, the window's short and it would have to be a quick campaign, and I honestly can't tell you what it would cost at this point. But I guess my question is, would you like me to pursue that and reach out and come back to you with a proposal at the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Go ahead.
As far as my comment on that, I think we've done so much around that, sales tax and so forth, that I think we've got good feedback on all fronts of it. What the major concern was the language and which was written on how it would be used. That it would not go into a general fund, it wouldn't be used for anything else other than that specific issue. So I think it's more of wording it. I don't think we need to spend the money to have another company come in and spend money on something like that. If people have spoken, in my opinion, as to what they're looking for. And we just need to have a wordsmith so that it goes along with that. And I think everybody would be just fine.
I agree with David, I don't think we need to campaign it. I mean, everyone in town is aware that we tried once already. They know that we're going to try it again. And I think that, like he said, if we address the wording appropriately, I think that was a lot of people's concern. And if we take care of that, I don't know that it's gonna need a lot of campaigning to pass. If we present it appropriately and have the wording right.
Thank you.
I'm all for going forward with it. As the sales tax, I don't know that we need the campaign.
And I'm fine with it, I just think the proper expectation out there for like, if the sales tax raises, the roads aren't gonna magically get better. Because we all did see also the cost of each little section, and it's still a 1% raise. You're gonna fix this much road, you know? And that's what I would like to see. The ballot language, yes, does need to be specific, it does need to be separated, but we need to set a proper expectation about what all that raises and how much still that does cost to improve things, because they'll come down on us immediately when things don't immediately happen.
Joyce?
I would agree with everything that Terry said. I don't really wanna spend money, on a campaign, but I do think we need to have expectations, and I think the last, go around, we did have good literature that showed what everything costs, and we just need to reiterate that to our community, that 1% will fix roads, but not overnight.
Olivia? I'm all for it too. Any direction?
I feel like I have very good direction, thank you.
Marcus, do you have any questions for the board or any comments as we go forward on this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think my only comment, and I think all of you are aware from the last election cycle, that just to remember that prohibition that once you do certify the actual ballot language, which I think the deadline's going to be around September 6th or 7th, depending on what the county comes back to Marion on. But once you have certified that ballot question, that's when the restrictions of the Fair Campaign Practices Act, or FCPA, kick in, and at that point you would be prohibited from spending any town funds to advocate a yes vote or a no vote for that matter. So I think really what we're talking about right now is there may be a need to engage Magellan or Slate on a limited basis to maybe help with making sure we get the ballot language correct, right, and that it's conveying what I think the voters in the surveys have told us. But that's the only thing I would add, is just to keep in mind that restriction of the FCPA.
Okay, thank you very much. Everybody okay to move forward?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Excellent. All right, next is our public comment, and it is for any item, whether it's on the agenda or not, unless it is set for public hearing. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. You may have 5 minutes if you're representing a group. The town clerk will now call up those who have signed in.
Kristen Cannon. Please hit the push to talk on the microphone. Thank you.
I'm Kristen Cannon. I live at 2545 Jarrett Drive, and I am here to listen and talk about the youth sports program. And I was just really relieved to hear a lot of the things you guys were discussing during your budget discussion. I appreciate the time that it takes to work out such details like that. And frankly, I didn't know what you were going to discuss during the budget discussion, and there's been some concern about the youth rec program. And so a lot of what you said was a huge relief, so thanks for that. And I heard a lot of really good things in that discussion. I heard, you know, Mayor Whitlow, you say that it's really important to get public input from Liberty Ranch about expanding the park. I think public input is really important on these issues. And I heard that we were going to work through the issues with the school. I know that that's probably a logistical nightmare, but, I think that I agree that we can get through that there are other fields that we can make adjustments and that it's temporary. And we'd be happy as parents in the school district to advocate that they put new and improved fields in their new school as they ask for public feedback on that. So, I would just really like to advocate that if there are any changes to the youth, rec sports or anything in the town, that just maybe more of an effort is made to reach out to the people that those changes impact. So, you know, I would love to be on an email group where I got notices for any time you guys were gonna discuss, you know, changes to Ames Park. I've seen a lot of the surveys come out about that, I participated in that, but as far as it pertains to, you know, soccer and t-ball and the other youth sports, I would love to be on an email group so I knew when it was gonna be discussed at board meetings. I think it'd be really useful to be able to give input on that. I just feel like we had a lot of questions over the last few weeks that didn't get very satisfactory answers. And as I said, I feel better about it now, but it would be really great if we could be part of the discussion and be able to give input on things that were gonna impact this program. And so I just really encourage you to find a way to build those email lists or ask for people to provide input on these things. I know youth sports is really important to my family and it's really important to other families, and I would say it's important to the community. Maybe people would disagree with me and that's fine, but I would just really, if there's gonna be changes, I understand I may not agree with all of those changes, but I would like to be able to at least say that I knew about them in advance and that I was able to provide input before they were made, so that it wasn't just a matter of having to be reactionary once a decision was made. That being said, also I do have some experience with GOCO grants, and I would suggest you really look into that for some of these parks. The issue with GOCO grants is they really do need good planning and they need good grant writing, and so I really hope somebody working for the town is a good grant writer and has experience with that, because there is a lot of money out there, especially for small communities like ours, to improve green spaces and have parks and have recreation opportunities. And so I would really encourage you to make sure that somebody on town staff is experienced in that and that they can pursue those grants. And that's about it. That's all I have to say. So just please, youth sports are important, and please, any changes that are going to be made to them, just be really transparent, and please have the community be able to give input, even if they don't like youth sports. Just the opportunity is important.
Thank you for your time tonight, appreciate it.
Mayor, that's all that's on today, the public comment.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, appreciate it. Next is the consent agenda. It's enacted in one motion and vote. Is there a motion for the consent agenda tonight?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, motion carries. Next is our staff report, town manager, by our town manager.
Thank you, Mayor. You have my report. I do have a couple updates that are kind of late breaking. On Friday, I heard from our friends over at Boulder Scientific. They actually asked us to come over and meet with the director of engineering and their staff, go over to their facility this Friday at 1 o'clock. Erica Rasmussen, our public works director, and I are planning to go. And I wanted to extend the invitation to any board member who'd want to come with us. Just to pick their brain, and perhaps we'll get a tour. I mean, they didn't give me a lot of information other than that they would be available to meet. So if any of you are interested, just shoot me an email and I'll let them know that you'll be coming.
You said what time, Friday?
1 o'clock this Friday.
Okay.
So if any of you are available, I'd love to have you join us. I think it'll be very interesting. Also, I wanted to let you know that Helping Hand Tree Service will be out pruning trees Wednesday through Friday. They're actually going to take one down. Are they going to take it down this week? There's at least one dead tree out there, and then there's some substantial pruning. So if you go by and you see that those are our people working there. We reached out some time ago to get quotes on that, to have that done.
Didn't we just get that done like a year or so ago? No, that's a little, this is around Highland Lake. We had a massive pruning job out there.
I mean, I'm not familiar with it, having been just last year, but
Right after we purchased it, we went out there and did a huge pruning job. I know for a fact we did.
and
I mean, not necessarily us, not Public Works, we hired somebody to do it, it cost like $50,000.
well, I'll ask Erica to address this.
And I,
Yeah, in the time that I've
completely out of my
been
mind.
here, in the time that I've been here, the 2 years, we have not done a massive pruning effort out there. So I don't know if it happened before I got here, but according to the tree service, it's been in the 8 or 10 year range was the last time they did it there.
Okay, I'm very perplexed because a lot of those trees around that lake were very dangerous. And I thought we had to get a bunch of them pruned right after we purchased it, didn't we, Chris?
Cindy, Helen, you can look into it.
I can look
Yeah.
into it and I'll get back to you. I think regardless of what we did at that time, we need to do some more because there, especially when you have a dead tree, it can be, with the storms that we have, we don't want it coming down. And so that's why we're having it done. It's not an annual event. We actually looked into it to see, because I had actually heard from the previous Public Works Ops manager that there were more dead trees than that. And I was concerned about it, because I've seen some big trees uprooted this year in storms. So that's the reason, but we'll get back to you with information on previous pruning efforts and why we're moving forward with this.
Okay. Maybe I'm thinking of all the pruning in this park that was done, I don't know.
It could be, because we did have some substantial efforts here as well, but we'll look in it. And then the other thing, speaking of Erica, I wanted her, we talked in our work session a little bit about our recreation coordinator. I just wanted to touch briefly on the other 2 positions we have open. The chief has some candidates in mind for our SRO. As you know, we're still looking to fill that, and it's looking like he has a very good candidate for that, so we'll be moving forward with the vetting. And then we also have, Erica is moving forward with the construction inspector, and I just wanted her to update you on that and what's going on in Public Works with respect to staffing.
Thank you. As you can imagine, Public Works is really busy in the summertime and things drop off significantly in the wintertime. So the challenge is always appropriately balancing our staff, that we have enough to be, meet our needs in the summer, but have enough for people to do in the winter as well. Also, we want to attract and retain quality employees, and so if I have to let people go every winter, we tend not to keep them around very long. They find other jobs. We did have 2 maintenance workers resign in the last 6 or 8 months, and I've not replaced them. I've kind of been monitoring how we can function without them, at least in our immediate future. And I feel like the bigger need is really a construction inspector and a right-of-way permit inspector. And you may recall a couple weeks ago, Chris Kennedy presented to you some information about the development that we have in the pipelines to the tune of 4,500 housing units. And all of the infrastructure that supports those 4,500 housing units, sewer, storm drainage, curb gutter, sidewalks, streets, all of that needs to be inspected before we accept it for maintenance. And those are really big investments that we want to ensure they're built properly on the front end. Otherwise, we inherit some maintenance issues long term. So right now, that inspection function is being handled by kind of a tag team between our operations manager and a consultant who is doing that for us. But as more developments come online and those needs continue to grow, I think it's much more efficient that we have that person in-house. Reduces our reliance on a consultant, and it also frees up our operations manager to do what he really should be doing, which is day-to-day operations of Public Works. This inspector would also inspect town projects, so for example, our chip seal maintenance program, or the North Creek Sewer project that we just finished. That person would be monitoring that as well. During the budget discussion we had last fall, we presented to you kind of a 5-year staffing plan for Public Works that included 10 maintenance workers,
and 2 construction inspectors. Right now I have 6 maintenance workers, proposing this 1 construction inspector. I'm also hiring a seasonal just to help get us through the summer to kind of do those more simple tasks like trash removal and stuff like that. So I think that meets our needs right now, certainly within the realm of the 5-year plan. And we can continue to incrementally ramp those up as developments come. So I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you.
And then if you have any questions for my report.
My only question or concern would be after your 1 p.m. meeting on Friday with Boulder Scientific, if you would put out a press release on what was the outcome of the meeting, since we were concerned about if there is an outcome that we put it out on the town meeting website, so our constituents are aware of us working on it and working on a resolution.
Okay, that's a great idea.
Anything further? All right, thank you very much, appreciate it. Next is our bills list. Is there a motion to approve the June 24th bills list?
I move to approve the June 24th bills list.
Second?
Any discussion? All right, roll call please.
Trustee Brodhead.
Yes.
Trustee Adams.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Palazuski.
Yes.
Trustee Hatch.
Yes.
Trustee Harris.
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes. Thank you, motion carries. Next is our public hearing. This is a public hearing for the second reading of the ordinance updating the building code. After staff presents, the public will be allowed to ask questions or make comments. Subject to 3 minutes time limits for individuals and 5 minutes if you're representing a group or an organization.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. You have before you an ordinance adopting the 2018 International Building Codes. You'll recall at the May 28th board meeting discussing how we're on the 2006 code now, and thus we'll need to update our building codes to a more recent version. Also, as discussed at the first presentation, well, actually since the May 28th meeting, staff has provided public notice required by state law and is asking the board this evening to make a final determination on whether to adopt these new codes or not. Also, as discussed in May, the bulk of the new building code material is not of a controversial nature and is recommended by Safebuilt, our building contractor, for approval. However, you will recall that the board was asked for specific direction on a number of the code sections up for adoption, including the question of whether or not to require fire sprinklers in duplex and townhome developments. So during this meeting, the board can engage further in this discussion or on any other issue related to the new codes, or you can move directly to adoption. So at this time, I would also like to introduce Chief Building Official Mr. Rocco DeLuca, who is also available to answer any questions that you may have on the new codes.
Good evening.
Hi sir, how are you?
I'm great.
All right, thank you for coming tonight.
I'm very thrilled to be here, and I want to introduce myself. My name is Rocco DeLuca. I am your building official for the town of Mead. Anything that has to do with buildings, my staff and I do the inspections, the plan reviews, and always answer questions. And most of the time that we've run into is helping homeowners that just don't understand the process, and that's part of what we do. That's what we're here for. Obviously, the town of Mead is growing. We think this is a positive thing that we're updating the codes and bringing them a little closer to something new. Like I said, I'm here to answer any questions that you might have, and I work for all of you.
All right, right now we're going to open up to the public if any public has signed in. If you did not sign in, please do so. You'll be allowed to speak after those have signed in. Has anybody signed in?
No one has signed it, Mayor.
Okay. Is anybody in the audience would like to participate in this tonight? All right, thank you. All right, do any of the trustees have any comments or questions for staff tonight?
Yes, I did, Madam Mayor. I had talked to Helen earlier, at CML, I had an opportunity to talk to a lot of other municipalities and several, people who do home building, safe built and so forth, was talking to them. And my concern is around the, water sprinklers on page 93 in the fire code, for, multi-use or multi-family homes with, either condos, apartments, those types of things, where if the sprinkler goes off in one unit, it goes off in all units, which then creates a whole another problem with water damage and so forth for a tenant that didn't even have an issue with the fire. I believe with the updated code that we have going on right now, with the additional parts that we have for the new thicker gypsum drywall and so forth, and then having it shielded above in the maintenance lockers, I think those things are sufficient at this point in time for the code for safety. I do know that they're working on, and they have it where it's already out there for commercial use, where if a area goes off, that the sprinkler will only go off in that particular area or unit. Unfortunately, it's not cost effective yet where they have it down to a residential side, but that's something I think we should push for. That's something we should definitely look forward to in the future, but I just don't think that it is something that the builders and are willing to endure that type of cost, because again, unfortunately, it always goes on to the consumer, and it's going to raise the prices significantly. Helen, do you have anything you want to add to that from our discussion?
Other than we do have both ordinances for you, our attorneys prepared that. Trustee Adams and I spoke about it. You know, there's some communities are adopting them, some aren't. My feeling is we should wait until they've improved the technology. And so, you know, like we're hearing now, they're coming up with smart sensors that limit the amount of water that come out. But I too went to CML, and I have heard some horror stories of sprinkler systems either breaking, you know, in the winter, or going off at the wrong time and really causing significant damage. So I would suggest that we revisit it when our friends at Safe Build and the community says that we've created something that's cost effective, and also even a dry system that uses a dry lubricant instead of water. Because I tend to feel, just based on my conversations, that the punishment is worse than the crime, and that there's enough false uses of them where they go off that I think it's something you should consider. Either way is fine. We still don't know an exact cost of what it adds to a unit. We've heard anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000. And so, again, it is a cost thing, but it isn't, I don't think it's 100% foolproof at this time. So that's all I have.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
I would tend to agree with Mrs. Mickelbrink and Trustee Adams. I think our presentation in the parking lot, and being in the construction field, I would like to postpone approving the sprinkler system in townhomes and homes.
I'm just worried about if they do go off, it's damaging somebody's other property. Like they said, that's not wouldn't be affected by a fire, you know, but the water's gonna do a lot of damage, so, yeah, I think we should put off passing that part right now.
I would agree.
Are we talking about eliminating them in all multifamily units entirely, apartments, everything? That's what I need clarification on.
The clarification would be removing, I believe it's subsection R313 in the International Residential Code. So you would not be required, you would not be requiring sprinklers in townhomes or one or two family dwellings, which would include single family detached or duplexes. Multifamily structures such as apartment buildings are regulated under the International Building Code, and I'll look to Mr. DeLuca to jump in and correct me on this since he's the expert. But my understanding is that multifamily structures would still require sprinkling system.
Well,
Since
townhomes are
they're under the
multifamily,
IBC.
so how many families to go?
Townhomes are not classified as multifamily because the way they're built, you own the property and there is a wall that separates. And you own everything that's in between those two walls. So that is a single family home. The townhouse is right out of the residential code, the International Residential Code. The single family homes, duplexes, are all out of the residential code. As you said, apartments, multifamily buildings, condominiums are all based out of the International Building Code. Different code, different set of criteria, and they operate differently because they don't have all the fire restrictions, the firewall separations in between those. The building is designed that a sprinkler system is ultimately the largest part of the protection of that type of building. Single family home, a duplex. The duplex has a firewall that's in between the two properties. You own the property that you live in, and you just have an adjoining property, but there is a firewall that's between them. So everything that you said was correct, and I don't know if there's anything else there that goes along with what you need answers for.
Thank you, sir.
I guess then I'm okay with that. I just wanted clarification on what we were removing, that's exactly what we were removing, so.
My take is that, my responsibility as the mayor and a part of the board is, my job is to make sure that my citizens are safe. I am not for changing the code. I am for keeping the sprinklers in there. That is my stance tonight. I feel it's very important that, I can sleep at night and that I've done the best job that I can to make sure my citizens are safe. And so if you decide to change the code tonight to accept a different ordinance, I will vote against it. Any further comments or questions? Okay, is there a motion regarding ordinance 892?
Are we talking the one that's already in place or right now, or are we talking about the amended one without the sprinkler system?
Make your motion.
So, I move to accept the ordinance. It's still under 892. I don't have it up for the standard upgrade for the 2018 building code with removing the fire sprinklers.
I second.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'm gonna roll call, please, Mary.
Trustee Adams.
Yes.
Trustee Broadhead.
Yes.
Trustee Hatch.
Yes.
Trustee Harris.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Palazuski.
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
No. Motion carries. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight, and thank you very much for coming tonight.
Absolutely.
On behalf of Safe Built, we appreciate your business, and thank you for keeping everyone here in this town safe and moving forward.
Enjoy doing it.
Thank you. Oh, I will now close the public hearing. The time is 6:52. Next, we'll move on to the new business, and will be our 2018 audit financial statements, and that will be presented by our town treasurer. Thank you, Denise.
Denise Rodnick, the town treasurer. I won't be presenting the audit, we have the auditors here to do that, so I'll introduce them, so. Just a little background, in 2018, we did issue an RFP, for auditing services. We've used the same auditor for 12 plus years since I have been here. And it's just a, best practice. There were no, issues with the auditor we had at the time, but it's just a best practice to sometimes rotate, through auditors and get some fresh eyes on the books and just make sure that everything's on the level. So we did issue an RFP in 2018 and the board approved to award the contract to Hinkle and Company. And so this was the first year that we had them to prepare the audit. So tonight, Mr. Jim Hinkle is here with Hinkle and Company, and Mr. Timothy Helfo. I knew I was going to mess up his name. They're both here to present the 2018 audit.
Thank you very much. Madam Mayor, trustees, my name is Jim Hinkle, and I'm here to discuss just briefly a little bit about the audit process. You do have a copy of the draft of the financial statements, I believe, in your package. You also have a letter that looks like this. I will talk briefly about both. The audit process starts off with our review of the town's internal control structure with respect to the accounting transactions and the recording of those transactions. Once we gain an understanding of the internal controls, we do what we call a test of controls, where we take sample items and we test the control features within the internal control structure, such as are disbursements approved before that they are actually dispersed? Is the appropriate documentation obtained before the payment is made? Is the coding and recording within the financial records, the general ledger, proper given that type of expenditure? And we'll test those control features to determine whether or not, as auditors, we can rely upon those control features later on in our audit process. We also, as we determine and document the internal control structure, we determine whether or not there are any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in those internal controls. Now, those two are very clearly terms of art in our world. A significant deficiency is defined as a weakness or an issue within internal controls that allows an error to go undetected in the ordinary course of business. A material weakness is a significant deficiency in internal controls that would result in a material misstatement of the annual financial statements. And through our analysis of the internal control structure and the testing of the control features to ensure that what was told to us was actually operating, we did not detect any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls. So while that isn't described in the report per se, if we had incurred or detected either one of those, we would have indicated what those were, so there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls. Once we're finished with that, we usually do that during our interim procedures, we come back after year end and we do what we call substantive testing on the year-end account balances, both the assets and liabilities and the revenues and expenses. And we use substantive testing for that which is tested details, account balances. We drill down into the account balances and test those details, or we do various analytic review tests, such as receivables in relationships to revenues and other types of analytic reviews to look for errors or misstatements in the financial statements and try to determine whether any of those exists. That's where a bulk of our time is spent, in those substantive testing and analyzing those tested details. The result of that is that we issue a report or opinion on the financial statements. That opinion that we issue is an unmodified, or in layman's term, a clean opinion. The financial statements are presented in accordance or conformity with general accepted accounting principles and applied on a consistent basis from the previous year. And that's what you're looking for in a clean opinion, that the financial statements, the entire financial statements, are presented in accordance with general accepted accounting principles. So the audit report is a clean report. Also, we issue this letter that is what we call a required communication letter to those charged with governance. Whether you have a designated audit committee or not, you still have a group of people that are charged with governance over the town, and that's who this letter is addressed to. If we have any certain events that occur during the audit, we're required to communicate in writing that they existed. If we do not, then we have to communicate in writing that we did not have any of these instances that we have to communicate. And that's in effect what we're communicating in the report that you have today. That we did not have any items that were required under our standards to communicate to you. We did not have any difficulties during the audit. We did not have any disagreements with management with respect to any accounting procedures or policies that management has. We are not aware of any instances where management has consulted with other accountants regarding our audit procedures or their accounting procedures. So if we had any of those things, we would have communicated those to you in this letter, and we did not. All in all, it was a good audit, especially for a first-year audit. Denise and her staff was very good to work with. Everything that we asked for during the process of the audit, we were provided. We were not excluded from anything, which is good. So I know that we are a disruption to staff's ordinary course of their daily lives. We ask a lot of questions, ask for a lot of documents, and we appreciate all of the help that we got throughout this process, especially this first year when we're learning a new client, the processes that the town has through their work. So all in all, I believe it was a good exercise, and I believe you guys can go with the takeaway that the audit is in conformance with general accepted accounting principles, and that we did not detect any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in the internal controls of the accounting department. Okay, I know I said a lot. I hope a couple of you guys picked up on a few things, but if you do have any questions, I would like to remind each and every one of you that we do work for the board. We work with management, so if you do have any questions at all, you're always welcome to contact us, or you can contact Denise and forward any questions that you have through her.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
Any more than have any questions or comments tonight?
Kudos, Denise.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept the 2018 audit financial statements?
I'll motion to accept the 2018 financial statements.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, motion carries. Next is our resolution number 48-R-2019. It is a resolution of the town of Mead, Colorado, approving an agreement for professional services with GMCO Corporation to provide dust control services to the town. Will be presented by our town engineer, Public Works.
Thank you. As you know, we annually treat all of our gravel roads for, excuse me, dust control. We have about 12 miles of gravel roads in the town, and we, like I said, typically do that annually or just as needed, as conditions demand. We have the county roads that we need to treat this year is 38, 36, 32, 5, 7, and 3. We did get 4 proposals for the dust control application, and GMCO was the low bid. Sorry. The 2019 budget did approve $35,000 for this work, and so we're recommending that we award that contract to GMCO in that amount of $35,000. It's a little bit more than what it's estimated for one treatment, but I'd like to have a little bit of flexibility if I do need to call them back if it's particularly hot summer and we have some needs arise where we need to call them back to do some additional treatments. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions, comments?
Question, so how long does an application last for? Is it a season, or is it depending on the amount of rain and things that we get, or how does that work?
Yeah, it really depends on the weather and the traffic that's on that particular road. So like I said, in the past, we've always done it annually. If there's something that happens, for example, you know, this isn't a great example, but if there was oil field traffic, we wouldn't have the oil field company do it. But just, you know, there's a significant increase in traffic in that case, and so we maybe would do it more often. Or if it's particularly hot and there isn't any rain, that chemical is actually reactivated when it gets wet, and so that's helpful. That we can actually sometimes rework it with just water, even though we don't actually reapply the chemical, and just kind of reactivate it and keep the dust down.
And do the oil and gas, they are supposed to, for wherever they're going on dirt roads, they have to keep the dust down, and so they already apply an application?
So if we have a road agreement with a particular drill site, that's part of their responsibility is to do that. Obviously, if there's traffic going through here that didn't originate in Mead, I don't necessarily know where it came from. I can't track that back to a particular oil company.
Anything further? All right, thank you very much. Is there a motion regarding resolution number 48-R-2019 for pest control services?
I move to adopt number 48R 2019, approving an agreement for professional services with GMCO Corporation for dust control services in the amount not to exceed $35,000.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Pelasuski.
Yes.
Trustee Hatch.
Yes.
Trustee Broadhead.
Yes.
Trustee Adams.
Yes.
Trustee Harris.
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes, thank you, motion carries. Next is ordinance number 901, an ordinance of the town of Mead, Colorado, amending the Mead Liquor Code concerning references to state alcohol beverage laws, applications for certain permits, and referencing a fee schedule. This will be presented by our town clerk, Mary Strutt.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. I'd like to take this opportunity to just do a quick little information on liquor licensing for you. I've started doing some liquor license trainings for the clerks in Colorado, so I do the basic trainings, and so this is part of my presentation to them, and I thought it might be helpful to you. So first of all, Colorado has a 3-tier system for liquor licensing. This started after Prohibition. So Prohibition was, around 1915 to the 1930s. When states began their licensing back up in the 1930s, Colorado went to a 3-tier system. The reason they went to a 3-tier system was because they didn't want somebody running the whole system. They didn't want the person who made the alcohol to be able to sell the alcohol to retailers and then own the retail store too. They wanted some division there. So that's how Colorado set up our state, okay? So tier 1 is manufacturers and importers. Those are like your wineries, your distilleries, your breweries. They make the beer. Your importers, tier 1. Tier 2 is the wholesalers. Those are people who sell to restaurants or liquor stores. There's a lot of them around. High Country Beverage, you probably see their things, but also the big breweries can act as wholesalers themselves. Those two, tier 1 and tier 2, are licensed solely by the state. The reason I mention this is because we had Black Canyon Distillery over on Highway 66 before. They were licensed as a tier 1 manufacturer. Their liquor license did not come to the Mead Liquor Licensing Authority for approval, and it won't. So we may have some other liquor licensing coming to the town, for example, breweries. So beer places that set up. Highland Lake Brewery, I'm hearing that name, may be coming to town. If they come to town, they have a couple of options of how they can get their liquor license. They can become a manufacturer and make beer and have a tasting room where they can sell it, which would only be licensed through the state. That would not come to us to see. Or they can be a brew pub, which is like a restaurant and sells beer. The advantage to them of a brew pub is that they could also sell other liquors. That would be considered retail. That would come to the Mead Liquor Licensing Authority for approval. So tier 3 are the ones that we look at. Tier 3s are restaurants, hotels, liquor stores, the convenience stores that sell liquor, so anything like that. So those are the 3 tiers. There is a dual licensing in Colorado. So of retail licenses specifically, the ones that we approve, there is a dual licensing. They don't just get their license from us, they get it from the state also. We have the local licensing authority, the town of Mead, has the authority to issue, deny, suspend, or revoke licenses. Again, only for those retail licenses. Your big job is to establish community standards. Those community standards are usually reasonable requirements of where liquor can be had and sold. Public needs and desires is big in the code. Ordinances or resolutions, zoning. There might be some zones where you don't want to allow alcohol sales. And then enforcement. Our police department does enforcement. Under the state side, what they do, they also have the same authorities. They can issue, deny, suspend, or revoke any liquor license in the state. They can do that from manufacturers all the way down to retailers. They tend not to do it to retailers. They tend to pass that back to the local licensing authority. They do background investigations also, but their background investigations are mainly looking at financial and ownership interests. They're looking, does the retail person who wants to do a store here, are they a manufacturer, are they a wholesaler? Because there are limits. I'm not gonna say you can't do all three, but there's limits to what they can do. So that's mainly what the state's looking for in their background investigations. They also do the rulemaking, so they set up a bunch of rules around how this stuff works, and they make all the basic laws. As a local licensing authority, you can make some local changes to those, okay? So some of the changes that you can make as a licensing authority is you can give the town clerk authority to administratively approve some types of licenses. And you have done that, we've had that in our code for years, okay? So the role of the town clerk in liquor licensing is customer service. People come all the time asking what the differences is and what they can do. Application, acceptance, and review, I do that. Scheduling of public hearings. Any new license coming to the town has to have a public hearing, and that'll come before the Mead Liquor Licensing Authority. Posting of legal notices, background checks and inspections. And here's the administrative reviews. These are the ones that the town clerk reviews that you don't even see. And I've highlighted 2 on there, and I'll get to those. Administratively approved special event permits. Special event permits are for beer gardens at concerts in the park, Oktoberfest, anything where they want to sell liquor. The Mead parent group did one at Scooter Hinge where they were having a fundraiser for the elementary school and they wanted to sell liquor by the glass. So nonprofits get those special event permits. Annual renewals, manager and owner changes, premises modifications. We had one come to you, a premises modification, which was an outdoor patio, right? You may recall that. Those don't really require a hearing, a public hearing. They don't require postings, so they could be handled administratively. Temporary permits, transfers of ownership, I highlighted, and the reason I highlighted that is when I was putting up this slideshow, I noticed we missed it in the ordinance that was in your packet. Previously it was in there, and I'll show it to you in a minute where it was in there, but we just missed it. We went from a paragraph format of what the clerk approves to a bullet point format. And just going from the paragraph to the bullet point, we missed that one. So I did add it back in the amendment that you have tonight. Temporary permits, tasting permits. Tasting permits are for, they're only for retail liquor stores or liquor licensed drugstores. They can allow tastings within certain requirements. There's times that they can do them. They can only do for so many hours and whatever. It's, you know, if you've been to like Wyatt's in Longmont, they have a tasting room in the back. Okay, so we haven't had that come up here in Mead yet. Again, it's only liquor stores that can do it. We only have one liquor store in town. If it comes up, I just wanted to make sure that the rules are covered in there. So tasting permits, the reason that that one is highlighted on there is because it is new. The laws did change around tasting permits. It wasn't previously listed under the town clerk's authority level here at town in Mead. But I would recommend you put it there. And I would recommend you put it there mainly because they are just administrative in nature. If somebody wants to do tasting, according to our code, you know, they set those up for a couple hours at a time. And usually there's a time frame involved, so it's with you meeting only every two times a month. Sometimes there's a time involved in doing that. Okay. So let me go on. The licensing authority role, so this is the Mead Liquor Licensing Authority, does issue, deny, suspend, revoke licenses, does hold public hearings, and does consider the community needs and desires. So what we would be bringing to the Mead Liquor Licensing Authority, generally in the future, and always, is new liquor licenses. You saw one for RJ Food Mart Conoco, that was a brand new liquor license. If special event permits require that they be posted, so like the beer gardens for the concerts in the park, those have to be posted for 10 days. If anybody objects to those, then it would come to the town liquor licensing authority for a hearing. As the clerk, I wouldn't approve that. If I had an objection, it would come. So those still come if there's any objection. The town clerk has the authority to approve, but not to deny. So if there's any objections, it would come to the liquor licensing authority to deny. Does that sort of make sense? Any questions on that so far? Marcus, did I get anything wrong? You're sort of,
No,
okay,
you've got it. You're doing a great job.
I'm good so far? Okay. Always wondering when you got an attorney in the room if you got that right. Okay. So tastings, again, this is new that we've added. So we did add this to the ordinance that comes before you. It applies to retail liquor stores and liquor licensed drugstores. It has been in our code previously, it just didn't fall under what the town clerk could approve. Staff is recommending administrative approval. The state law did change to allow different hours of tastings and how many days per year they could do tastings. Pretty high up there. We just matched the Mead ordinance to the state code. Okay. Fees. Another big thing we're doing with this ordinance change is we were removing fees from our code. The fees were all listed in boxes in our code, and you can see that in the red line version that you have. We took it all out. The reason for taking it out is because the Department of Revenue sets fees and also gives recommendations for local fees, and they generally do that annually. So if we leave the fees in our code, we gotta change our code all the time. It doesn't make sense. We should say that we're gonna set our fees by resolution, and then as the fees change, we can bring a resolution with those fees. We plan to bring those fees in a resolution if you approve this ordinance. If you approve this ordinance, it gets posted for 30 days before it goes into effect. So we would bring a resolution with those fees to you at your next meeting. One question I have on fees, and I can send you all the fees if you'd like to see them. The fee schedule is on the Department of Revenue website. I did not put it in your packet. Most municipalities just match what the Department of Revenue says. They have 2 columns, and we'll bring those along when we do the resolution next time. One column is what the Department of Revenue charges. The other is recommended for the city, county, or town in our case, and it is generally an up to amount. Okay, so it's generally up to $1,000, up to $500, up to $100. That's generally how their fees are set. Most municipalities match that max amount because it does take a lot of work. A new license, I believe, is up to $1,000. When I did that RJ Food Market, it was a lot of work for us and for the attorney to process those applications, and we gotta make sure those costs are covered under that fee. The one fee that I'd like you to consider is the special event permit fee. The special event permit fee, again, is for nonprofits setting up events. So it's for the beer garden at the concerts in the park, it's for Oktoberfest, it's for these other things. The fee is up to $100. Previously, we charged $25. So if you wanna go with the $100, that's fine, that's what the state recommends. I think that's a pretty big jump for what we've been doing. I also kind of feel we're a small town, and does the beer garden at the concert in the park make that much money? I would like it to see it cover our expenses. The expenses of doing a special event permit is my time with posting and reviewing the application and making sure that everything's in it. I would recommend we go with $50. But it's totally up to you if you want. You could waive the fee, you could go 25, you could go 50, you could do 100, you could do whatever you want. But I just thought I'd bring that one up for consideration because it's the one that, based on our code, currently was $25. It's gonna be a big jump.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes,
Could
ma'am.
you get a yearly, if a nonprofit wanted to do a yearly special event and give a certain amount cap, 10, whatever that number is the state says, would you entertain a cap of a year for a license for like the 10 that is regulated?
So,
I'm just
in the
asking a question.
resolution, you could set whatever fees you feel is appropriate. Special event permits, each nonprofit can get only 15 per year, and they are individual. So even if there's 5 concerts in the park, they are considered 5 separate events, so it would be a fee per event.
Okay.
So, again, you gotta make sure, you want your nonprofits to make some money too. You don't want
the school PAC program that came in and they wanted to do 2 or 3. and they're not making very much money, would you consider like a half price for 3 events for 150 versus 300, or whatever the price would be? So I don't know how that would, I'm just asking a question, I have no idea, but
You're asking.
I think you need to ask, you know.
It's up to you guys.
Yeah, so that's just one consideration that we need to take for our little town, because a lot of the events that we put on, and I don't know how much Oktoberfest makes, it could, $50 would be fine for that, but I don't know. But I mean, there's a lot of tiny little events scattered throughout the year that the board, you know, comment when we come with that resolution to make sure if you stale at 50, is that feasible for smaller organizations? So, anything else?
I was gonna ask a question which kind of piggybacks off of yours. So if it's the same exact event and it's the same type of licensing you're looking for, why do we have to charge a fee for each one? It's the same thing, because I'm not quite understanding how why.
The application is by event, so it's by event, it's by date and time, and they're only allowed 15 events for special events. Again, that's why I'm asking the question about, is $100 too high for the town of Mead?
Well, and she has to process each application and post each application. So even though it may be a small event, it still costs her time. So you do have to consider that it does cost her time, and she can't just say, oh, did this last time, check, done, you're good. You know, I mean, she still has to go through a process, so.
And the other thing on that is, with each application, each one is posted, and each one there is the opportunity for someone to object, which would bring it to a hearing before the board, you know, which would incur more expense in processing time. As long as I've been here, we've never had an objection to a event permit.
So how far ahead does that have to be, this permit have to be posted before the event?
The application is required to be in 45 days prior to the event, so that it can be posted for 10 days prior to a hearing of the liquor licensing authority.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, do we wanna, give her direction on this fee? As far as, do we wanna do, if, I think Mary, your recommendation was $50 per event?
Or do we wait till you come back with choices?
Well, we'd like to put together the resolution with a number in it, and so I'd like to know if there is a number that I can start with to put in there. I mean, or I could just put $50 in. If you don't like that number when it comes, you can always amend the resolution that comes before you in your motion.
Because currently it used to be 25.
Correct.
So.
Yeah, I would like you to come back with with the resolution showing $50, just to cover the cost for the town of Mead. That's my thoughts on it, and then we can discuss it when it actually comes in front of the board again.
Any other questions, comments?
I think 25 is good, but.
It's good.
Yeah.
But it doesn't cost, you know, what she knows better, cost of the whole licensing process, plus the paperwork, plus the materials and the timing and.
I mean, I'm just thinking of the concert in the park where they came in with their beer garden and stuff. Did they make enough to even cover $50? I don't know if they did, you know. Are we going to be deterring people from wanting to contribute to our events and stuff because they're like, I'm not even gonna make $50. Why do I need to spend $50 on this?
I have to discuss that as the time when the resolutions come. At least people will be able to think about it for a couple weeks, and then we can talk about it then. But I think if we start that motion and get this on the books, then at least we can improve it next time.
Okay.
Fair enough?
I think I have my direction on that, and I have one more slide for you before we go to the ordinance. So there's other considerations that the town can put into their code about liquor licensing. These are the main ones that people consider. Open container. You can allow open containers in your parks if you so choose. I don't recommend it. I've talked to the chief. He doesn't recommend it either. But I just wanted to throw it out there that it's something that Denver and Lakewood are looking at recently, you know, do they want people to be able to drink a beer in their park without getting a special permit? I personally think we're too small, but I mean, these are just considerations over the years as we grow, okay? Common consumption is becoming a big thing, and it is certainly evolving right now. The one who first did common consumption was Greeley, and what the thing is an area where there are several licenses in a space, like a downtown, where you have 2 bars and a restaurant, or 2 bars and 3 restaurants, and in the summer you wanna close off those roads and put bands out in the middle of the street and allow people to go from restaurant to bar to whatever and bring their alcohol with them. So Greeley has the first laws on this, and they've done pretty well with it, and they do that during the summer quite a bit. The question has come up to me, which is why I'm throwing that out there, about Arlo's Place and Mead Town Center. It's not here yet, but it's a consideration in the future that we might need to look at the state statute and our codes if it's something we want to consider in the future. The other thing is, if anybody's heard of Avante in Hilo in Denver. So it is a big building that has like food trucks in it. So, and they call it, I forget what they call it, but it's like upscale food trucks, and it's so that chefs can try out new stuff or whatever. So it's like indoor food trucks. So you can get your food here and your food here, your food here. But they have a common liquor license that covers that. One of them was done under common consumption, one of them was done under a specific license. The one in Boulder is looking at doing it under a specific license. Once again, Mead Town Center has discussed wanting to look at something like that. We don't have a code for it. We would have to set up arts districts and whatever to do it. So it's just down the pipe, but we might need to look at it someday, right? The other thing that we might need to look at is distance requirements, and this might be the one that, with your approval, I might look at. There's new distance requirements that went into effect on January 1st. Some things, and they mainly apply to retail liquor stores and convenience stores, and their distance from each other. The distance from schools really hasn't changed, but in small towns, it may disqualify anyone else from doing business in the town. So, we might take a look at like where our liquor store is and where our beer stores are, and kind of do that diagram of could anybody else go in there, and decide if we want to adjust those distance requirements. So, something to think about. That's all I have. Anybody have any questions?
I have a question on Prospect. Prospect every Monday night, you can bring your liquor to the park, you eat out of the food trucks, you listen to a band. What kind of liquor,
Open container.
So it's
That's
open
open container, because you're bringing your own.
Right.
It's not being sold. They allow open container in the park.
Not that I've been.
Can you do that by special permit? Or can, like, I know you're saying that like Denver's looking at allowing you to have a beer in a park anytime. But can you do a special permit that allows open container?
Absolutely, and we do.
Okay.
And we do. So we rent out the park and the community room, and if somebody wants to serve alcohol at their event, we do have a form for them to fill out and a process for them to be allowed to serve alcohol, either here or at the park. We have it happen, we've had a wedding or two in the park here. We actually have a wedding just trying to schedule right now in the end of September in this park. We have parties in this room. So for a private event, we can give them permission to have alcohol. It's not selling the alcohol by the glass. Selling alcohol is where you need to consider liquor licensing. Also, a public event has other considerations. So if I have a private event, if I have a graduation, I can invite all my friends and family. But if I do an open house and say, hey everybody come, I'll give you a beer, that's a public event. And I would have to have a specific liquor license for that. So for the ordinance that's in your packet, I did pass out an amended AIS with the amended motion and I ask that you would consider approving the transfers as part of the ordinance.
It's on the second page. Thank you very much for your time on this. Is there a motion regarding ordinance number 901?
I move to adopt ordinance number 901, an ordinance amending the Mead Liquor Code concerning references to state alcohol beverage laws, applications for certain permits, and referencing a fee schedule, with the addition of transfer of ownership to section 6-3-90B.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, motion carries. Next is our elected official reports. Any of the town trustees would like to speak tonight?
The only thing I have is, ride to work is on Wednesday, since not that many people can ride to work except for Mrs. Strzok. Let's all just get out and ride a bike.
All right, I just have a few things that's coming up. Concerts are coming up this Thursday. We have a bike parade, July 4th. Terry, does that start at 10 o'clock?
Correct.
Movies in the Park, July 5th. Movie will start at dusk, and it is, what's it called, to put that? Ralph Breaks Internet. And then I'll be hosting Coffee with the Mayor, July 6th from 8 to 10 in this room. And I would say kudos to Erica. We have a news release for our new logo that's in your inbox tonight, and it was released today, and so thank you very much. And I just wanted to bring my little plaque that I won, because I've joined the elite leaders of Deb Broadhead and our Mayor Meg Comer. So I got an achievement award, and I wish that all the trustees would sign up for this university. It's great education, it's wonderful training for all of us, but we achieved, both of us, 100 credits in our, I wouldn't say college, but it is a college. But I just wanted to bring that up.
Did they go through each step? Because I had to go through.
I had to go through each step too. So there's one step at 30, one step at 60, one step at 100. So, but that's all I have.
Congratulations.
Right.
I had something.
Yeah, go ahead, for sure.
I'm wondering, with Highland Lake, in regards to Highland Lake, I know that, we discussed turning the ditch rider cabin over to the Highland Lake Historical Society. Can we get that process going forward? Because it's really irregardless of the ultimate plans of the park. The ditch rider's cabin isn't going anywhere. Is there any, because I'd like to see them starting doing something with it. The roof is blowing off of it. It's starting to kind of need some maintenance, and if we're gonna turn it over to the Historical Society, I'd like to do it sooner rather than later, because obviously the worse it gets, the harder it's gonna be to repair it and for them to put it back to the state they want it to be. So, I don't know how we get that moving forward.
I'm happy to look into the procedure for doing that. It hasn't come up at any of the recent pros committee meetings. I don't know if that's still, I'll bring it back to them and ask them if that's something they're still interested in doing. And certainly, if you'd like to see that done, we can look into that.
I don't know, this was something that, when I was on the pros committee, we discussed turning that cabin over to the Historical Society. It's not something that we would be able to do something with as a town. It's just an old building. They had talked about potentially, the Historical Society said they could maybe put some plexiglass or something, and then like inside the cabin put like make it look like it would have looked back in the day, so that people coming to the park could look through it and kind of, get an idea, just kind of as a historical perspective of what it was back when. And it doesn't, the ditch rider's cabin doesn't do anything for us as it sits. And we're not gonna tear it down either, at least I don't believe that's anywhere in the plans to remove it. It is part of the history of that park. So, like I said, I've seen it starting to deteriorate. I'd like to get that over to them so that we can get the maintenance going on it. If everybody else is okay with that.
I'm okay. I'm okay, yeah, and then maybe reach out to the Historical Society. When's your next pros meeting?
It is the 17th of July? 18th of July?
So we're not nice to get it transferred if that's what our intent is, and let them start working on it.
Sure, we'll certainly reach out to them as staff and get that process going.
I'd like to know how much how does it affect our insurance in any way? You know, grounds, you know, if something should ever happen to somebody trying to do this, what is the implication of the town? Just to make sure that we're protected too.
Yeah, we'll take
For
a
our
look at all of
volunteers.
that, in terms of cost and procedure, reliability, those kind of things.
All right, thank you.
Would you do your microphone?
Sorry. All right, all right, anyone else? All right, we're gonna go into executive session. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
I make a motion for us to adjourn from the regular meeting and go to executive session.
Can you say that?
Oh, pursuant to Colorado statute 24-6, 402, 4B, for legal advice relating to procedural matters set forth in the town employee handbook.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you. The time is 7:34. And we'll turn off the recording and adjourn to executive session in the upstairs conference room where we will restart the recording for executive session.